Hello, people. Welcome back to another episode of The Tech of Tomorrow, where we believe that the real technology of the future are the humans building that future. And I just realized I forgot to say this in the previous podcast, so well, too bad. Now you know it again. Our guest today, let's go to the important things. Our guest today is the founder of the Idol Academy. That's an award-winning career school for instructional design, staffing, and online learning and development. She's Robin Sargent. She's very active on LinkedIn, which is where I first connected with her. So, welcome, Robin.
Thanks for having me, Sebastian. Yes, I'm happy to be here.
I'm extremely happy to be here with you too. So, give us some context about yourself. Who is Robin
Okay.
in a couple sentences?
Okay. I'm Dr. Robin Sargent, and I am the founder and owner of Idle Courses. And Idle Courses is the trade school that serves clients while developing the next generation of creative learning designers. And how do we do that? We do that through a couple of different programs. But our signature program is our career vocational school called Idle Academy. And Idle Academy is the first and only state authorized vocational career school for instructional design and online learning development. And what's cool about that is that it used to be, in order to become a learning designer for corporate, you had to go get some type of master's degree in instructional design. And in those master's degrees, as we know, you learn a lot of knowledge, but you don't learn a lot of skills, and you never put your hands on designing or developing training. And so when I started my career school in 2019, that was the focus, was to treat instructional design and learning design as a career and a trade, which means hands-on skills, doing work as an intern and getting experience, building a portfolio, and being career ready by the time that you graduate from our program, and not just another course where they stuff you full of knowledge and you have to write research papers.
I like that. I like everything that goes from just writing papers to actual value and delivery, as everybody knows, reading me talking about consultants. So, a lot to unpack there. Let's start with what is instructional design. Let's say I'm a CEO. I'm just being focused on delivering customer projects and building a team. I'm listening to this and I don't know what instructional design is. What is it?
It's just a fancy way of saying training, right? It's just a fancy way of saying how you create the training in order to develop your employees on processes, procedures, or just making them better professionals. So we are the learning nerds in your organization.
That sounds great. How did you come to it? Where does the passion from learning, teaching, building programs come from? How did you come into building idle courses in the Idle Academy?
So I actually started out in higher education. I was the assistant dean of students for Shorter University. And while I was there, that was back in 2010, 2011, and they wanted to move all of their in-person programs to online. And if you know anything about higher education and people who work as faculty at the university, they are Luddites. They are afraid of technology. They generally do not like change. But that is not me. I've always loved technology. I've always loved change. And so they put me in charge of spearheading the online program development. And so I designed the curriculum. I moved the curriculum from in-person to online. I set up the learning management system. I trained the adjunct faculty on how to run online classes. And then whenever it was all loaded up and done, I was the academic advisor for all of the students and the tech and the troubleshooter. So I mostly just did all these things. And I loved it so much that I wanted to know, well, is there a job where I just do this full time, where all I do is just build out training online. And that is actually how I found corporate training or corporate instructional design. And then I did everything I could in order to move from higher education to corporate training. And I did. It took me about 9 months. And then I moved pretty quickly up the ranks. Once I became an instructional designer, I became a director of learning and development within 2 years at another company than the one that I started at. And while I was there, like since the beginning, I was always working on the side. I was always taking on side projects, contracting, building e-learning for other clients and companies. And so I just had built myself a ramp of business. And so by 2017, I was on maternity leave with my third and final child. And I went full-time in my business, January 2018. And that's when I founded Idle Courses. And at the time, it was just a learning design agency. But I found that I needed a different pipeline of talent. And I found that the people that I was trying to hire as my subcontractors, well, they weren't speaking the same language. They didn't have the same level of skills. And they had various different rates for skills that weren't very valuable to me. And so I started to build my pipeline in the best way that I know how to do. And that is, of course, train the people that I wanted to hire and find my own talent. And so that's kind of how Idle Academy started out, was for me to find talent. And now it's kind of definitely changed because now it's its own career school. And I still have the staffing, but I don't do, it's not an agency, it's a staffing agency. And I place my graduates on 1099 contracts for large corporate projects.
It's great. I've seen some cool corporate logos on your LinkedIn banner.
Yeah.
Can you tell some of those stories?
Yeah. So this is actually the part that's just surprised me. You know, you do a thing and you know that you do it out of, you know, a need and a passion. And like, really, I built a lot of it because I know that I wasn't getting the training that I needed from my PhD program. I was very grateful that I was already a director of learning and development by the time I got my PhD, because otherwise I would have learned nothing about designing, training, building e-learning or anything like that in higher education. And so I knew that was the same for the people that I was training, right? Even though a lot of them had master's degrees, they had no career skills. And so based on that, that's what I focused on. And so because I focused on the career skills, the students that started graduating my program started landing jobs in 8 weeks, 3 months, 6 months, and they were landing jobs at Amazon, Google, Cigna, Microsoft, Zillow. And that's the part that really just, I mean, I guess it shouldn't have surprised me, right? But it did, because my goal for them was just for them to get a job. I had no idea that because I was mindful and insistent on, you know, this model of giving them deliberate practice every step of the way and expert feedback on every single thing that they put in their portfolio, that it would accelerate their skills and accelerate their professionalism in a career that they've never even worked in before. But because they went through this process in my program and they were getting experience as well, by the time they graduated, they were beating out their competitors, so to speak, for high-level corporate jobs. And these are people that were teachers. You know, they went from being a teacher in a classroom to working as an instructional designer at Google.
That's a great track record to have, especially because
Yeah.
for people listening in Europe, as you know, probably those jobs are extremely high paying compared to what they would pay in Europe. So it's a remarkable achievement. So how do you go in? How long does it take you to be the number one, basically the only? How do you get there? Because it's been in to some standards, it's been quick, 7 years. So
Five
five.
from the time I started the school till now.
How did you get there then?
I think it's one of those things where when you build a product, I guess you can call education a product. It's a product and a service, right? It's a combination because we include one-on-one mentorship and so on. But when you build a product and a service that focuses on your customer, or in our case, our student, our number one focus has always been on our student and what is it that they need in every step of their career journey, from the moment that they realize I want to be an instructional designer all the way to after they land the job and they need support in that role. What are all the things that we can do and provide for them to make this journey faster, easier, and really develop their confidence in the industry? And that's what we always focused on. And I think when you do that, you create what they call the raving fans. And I think it has been the students that have been testimony after testimony that this process works. And of course, it's based on like learning science too, right? So I'm a learning science nerd, and that's how I built this education program. And so if you use what you know works, as from an evidence standpoint, and you just keep repeating that and adjusting based on the feedback that you get real results. And that's the thing that we've been focused on, is getting results for our students. And I think it's those word of mouths that have made the significant growth that we've had.
So I would say it's a mixture of obsession and obsession with the customer, and obsession with the customer being your students, obsession with your students, and obsession with the craft, if we can call it that way, right? So would it be fair to say that in your free time it is very easy to find you nerding out on learning science?
I would say definitely that's my enjoyable. It's hard to even call it work, right? That's my business activities, is all learning science, and I love new technology. So I am gone full ham into AI, and that's how I've always been with all the new technology. But I would say in my free time, I just love learning in general, and that's not just learning science. I mean, I go down some very strange rabbit holes.
Please share one of those strange rabbit holes with us. You cannot just bring that up and leave us there.
Okay, well, I like strange things like quantum physics.
Okay.
I love weird mysticism types of things. I love to go into, I guess you would say, some type of like human design is another one of my weird things that I get into. And then of course, like business and on and on. So it's whatever I want to learn more of. I think that's kind of the thing about that, somebody who's going to make a great instructional designer. It's someone who's obsessed with learning new things all the time.
I like that. The reason I ask, because I have this tagline, which is excellence is a commitment. And I am fascinated by excellence and by obsessed people. When people love what they do, they inevitably get obsessed about it. So I like that you are obsessed with learning, and you turned it into basically this massively successful business. So I admire that so much. And back to something I wanted to ask you, though, because you brought up something interesting a couple of times. It's technology. You are very into technology, and unlike the traditional educational sector, which still everywhere resists adopting, I remember in Italy it was 2015, and screens in classrooms were still something like, oh wow. And very, very worldwide, the educational sector is a bit resistant to change and technology. What would you say is the role that AI is playing, and more importantly will play, in reshaping how we educate the next generation of kids and then workers?
I think that AI is a game changer, just like the internet was. The fact that you can offload brain draining tasks like research, writing outlines, collecting and collating data, finding the patterns in data. You can now automate so many of these different tasks that used to take you hours and hours and days before you could even get to, for example, in data, before you could even get to the data story that tells you something about what's going on in, and of course, I'm going to take it back to learning, that tells you what's going on in your training and performance outcomes, right? We used to have to spend so much time downloading reports, taking the reports, collating the reports, trying to make some type of charts out of them, and then trying to analyze, like, what do these numbers mean? But now I can just go to, I love AI so much, I've even given ChatGPT a pet name. I call him Chippy. So I just go to Chippy and I just upload all these Excel docs and ask it to, collate information, give me a data story, tell me what's going on, in the assessments for these students, or are there questions that they are missing, and so on and so forth. So that's one thing. So you can start thinking about bigger things when you have basically an intern to do this, low task type of work for you. Other thing I love about AI is the personalization that is coming out, because we know that learning is a personal experience, right? If you're not experiencing learning, then you're not learning. And so much of our experiences are what they need to be personalized. Well, with AI, you can personalize training because it can update based on where you should go next, reading what you've done before in the training. And this AI allows these tools to be less complicated to build for just your average instructional designer. I just made a partnership with another company called We Are Learning, and they have even built a tool where AI is built into the background, where branching scenarios, right? Putting people in real life scenarios, we know is the best ways for them to learn new skills, right? They need to practice in a real world setting. Well, a lot of times it used to be that you could only do branching scenarios where it's like multiple choice. And so you had to build out like all the background information about, okay, so like if they pick this choice, it'll go here. And if they pick this choice, it'll go here, and yada, yada. But now with AI, they don't have to pick multiple choices at all. They can just type in what they would say to the customer or what they would do next, right? And AI in the background can now create the branching on the fly, which makes this more personalized and more real world, just like you were talking to a real customer. Because if you're talking to a real customer, you don't have a 3-option multiple choice come up and say, like, what would you say to this customer? Do you want it hot, cold, or lukewarm? Like, that's not what happens, right? You have to think of it on the fly. And so I just see a lot of benefits coming out of AI, especially the fact that the personalization and being able to have some more higher order thinking room when you don't have to spend all that time on the lower level tasks.
It's fascinating. What does that mean for students, right? Because how we've been conditioned to think about everything that related to learning and academia and school is that we get fed information, we regurgitate the information, we get evaluated on the quality of our regurgitation, which again, it's kind of an obsolete model in a society where knowledge is a commodity now, because again, you can ask ChatGPT and it will tell you anything you want. And I have a small sister and she goes to school. Some of the homework comes out of ChatGPT. Teachers don't want that, but they cannot stop it. So how do you see the educational system adapting to this reality? How do we evaluate students, or do we just have to change the things we teach them so that we don't have to evaluate them just based on information they learn?
I think it's both. I think because you still have to put the prompts in, you still have to do critical thinking, you have to do a structured prompt, you have to get radically specific. And in order to get radically specific, even in, a school assignment, you have to have a base level of knowledge in order to get specific about the types of outputs that you want from AI. I think prompt engineering is a skill. I think that we have to embrace it at some point, and I think that they have to continue to increase the types of skills that we are teaching them, which is more about critical thinking, right? More about, okay, well, so you have to critically think about how you're going to put your prompt in, and then what is it that you're getting out, and then what is it about what you're getting out of AI that you need to think critically about, right? You've got to still check the sources, you got to check the information because it's not flawless, right? You still need to go to primary sources and so on and so forth because, as we know, right, it got access to the free information. It didn't go and read library books or, peer-reviewed journals or things like that. So you still have to be able to do the research and the critical thinking to double check your work. And you still also at this point, I mean, he's getting smarter, but it still sounds like a robot. And so there's the other part, right? You still need to learn how to use creativity because you still have to make sure that it sounds like it came from you and in your voice. And so I think that those skills are still very important. I don't know about you, but you can tell from a mile away if somebody has written a post on LinkedIn or a comment on LinkedIn that was written by AI.
That's such a pet peeve of mine. When I
Yes.
see when I see a post that's clearly AI or that has even one sentence written in GPT voice, I just scroll past it. And when people comment under my stuff and they go with this very insightful, I go immediately,
Yeah.
thank you, ChatGPT. And I do wonder, right? Why don't they just come up with answer of their own? Since it takes time to have GPT or take the post, paste it into GPT, and get an answer and paste it back to LinkedIn. It's it's being used in a lazy way, and I don't like that, even though I love the tool and I use it daily. Right now, I use more Perplexity because it's great for research, but I
Yeah.
use AI daily.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the other thing to be said too, right? Is that if we're talking, I mean, I think you said the word commodities earlier. What it does do is it puts a higher value on a human created thing as well, right? The fact that like we are getting bombarded with content that is generated by AI. So what's the new novel for us? The new novel for us would be somebody who wrote it from their own brain, all messy, right? And that's what we are craving. Just like even like TikTok, what do we crave more? We crave the authenticity that comes from TikTok of people like just sitting in their car having a conversation with you or telling you a story. I think the same is probably could be said about social media in general, right? Where it was all like everybody's online, so we don't need to hang out in person anymore. But then we got a big dose of that during COVID. And so what is it that we crave more than anything now?
Connection.
Going in person, being connected, real time, face to face, bringing people back to the office. And so I definitely see that there's going to be, another a swing, and it'll just be more of how you use AI to help you and less of it just letting it do things for you, especially when it would be better to come from an authentic person.
There's a lot of layers to this. I always tell my client that, I help companies just stand out in saturated markets. And my new thing is the ultimate form of differentiation is connection. If you show your customers that you care about them and they feel that you care, they feel like you're talking to them, even though you cannot possibly know them. That's a form of connection that nothing can replace. I got a mentor that I paid based on the fact that everything I read from him, first of all, came from him and not from AI. And second of all, it felt like he was speaking to me for a year consistently every day. That's something that AI cannot replicate. There is a contextual awareness you need to build a communication system that conveys that powerful message to somebody that needs to hear it. And that's the ultimate way to stand out anywhere. Just be make the other person feel connected to you, and that's what we are losing. That's also what we crave, because I was talking just an hour ago in another podcast episode with the founder of Nobi, and he told me that in communities, when he tried to implement a human sounding intro bot, and the people in the community hated it. It felt fake. The moment he made it sound again like a dumb robot, we just gave them indications of where to go, they loved it. Because people in communities need that human connection.
Yeah, that and it's true in learning too as well. Like there, it is through evidence that we know that people learn better through human voices rather than robots. Like if you have to create a voiceover, and you're an instructional designer, you will not use a robot because we know that it gets in the way of people learning because it just grades on you, right?
What do
You
you
can
think of Notebook LM? Have you played around with it?
No, but my friend Luke Hobson has Dr. Luke Hobson. So he tells me that I need to check it out. I have not got, but I've seen some of what it can do, but I haven't got a chance.
Check it out because I tried it. I also saw a lot about it, but
Yeah.
you don't get a feeling for it until you try Notebook LM. And
Okay.
just do it. I bet you write articles somewhere or a post. Take a long post of yours or a video, feed it
Hmm.
into Notebook LM. It will turn it into a 9-minute podcast with two voices that discuss and add context to the thing you gave it. It is one of the most impressive use cases of AI I have come across in since ChatGPT came out. It was
Fast,
wonderful.
fascinating. Because I know we do a lot of like podcasts for learning as well. That's kind of a new thing. And so to be able to take maybe like a textbook or some curriculum and turn it into something that's more audio, that would be interesting to hear.
It does that really, really good, and it's shocking, right? It's not perfect, but it's shocking.
Yeah, and it's only getting better, right? So we're just
Yes.
at the, pretty much it's only been a couple of years.
It's been a couple of years.
Genesis.
It's
Yeah.
accelerating so fast. And
Yeah.
now, something I wanted to ask you about. We connected on a post about company culture. And I work a lot with people in the tech space where there is this weird conundrum by which culture is greatly appreciated and sought after, but at the same time is not fully understood because it's more of a mirroring thing. We see that big tech has amazing culture. Everybody in tech at the smaller levels assume we need amazing culture. You said a lot in your content that training training sessions are not enough to create great culture. But I do know consultants, even competitors of mine, who get into a company, deliver a training session, and that's what they do, and then they leave. So why explain to me and to the audience why a training session isn't enough and what do you actually need to create a great culture? And maybe we could start by what is your definition of company culture?
Okay. That's a lot to unpack, but I'll start from the, instructional design side. So training, and instructional design, learning development, whatever you want to call it, it can only solve two problems. It can, well, maybe three. It can solve a knowledge, a skills, or an attitude gap, right? That's it. So if there is something wrong with the culture, if there is something wrong with the technology that they're using, right? If there's something wrong with the expectations that the employees are given, training doesn't fix that. Training only can solve the gaps for knowledge, skills, and sometimes attitudes. So if you know that to be true about training's role and what types of gaps that they solve, then it's pretty clear to see that training does not solve culture gaps. And from my perspective, as a CEO, I would say that culture is a derivative of the leadership. And so, I mean, not only as a CEO, but even being an employee, right? Where does the culture come from? I see it from the leadership. So if you have a toxic culture, I guess, if you want to call it, or a broken culture or whatever, culture of fear, what does that usually come from? It comes from the behaviors of the leadership. So I remember being in a culture that was uh, not very, it wasn't comfortable. We'll put it that way. It wasn't a comfortable culture. And it was for several reasons. It was because they were constantly firing people, because the expectations were not clear about what did and did not get you fired. Um, And then also they were very hard on, their, what metrics were going to keep you in your job or not keep you in your job. They stayed focused on just produce, right? And there was no like fun, reward, support, right? And those kinds of things. And so what does that add up to? That adds up to a culture of fear and insecurity, and really just don't like those people very much, right? Because they don't seem like they care about you, your life, or your work, because all they care about is like meeting certain numbers. They're firing people all the time. You're hearing about leadership having favorites, or maybe even some harassment going on in the office, sorts of situations, right? So for me, that's like the CEO's number one job, is to create the culture. As a matter of fact, whenever people buy out businesses, they keep on the CEO for what reason? For the culture, right? To keep the culture going. That's also why those mergers and those acquisitions are such a delicate time, because you have to merge the cultures, which is you're merging the behaviors of the leadership, which is also why a lot of times you do what? You keep the leader of the company that you bought for a couple of months or a year or whatever, in order to keep the culture going. And so those are my biggest things about culture. I don't know if I said enough or.
Yes, it was perfect. It's interesting
Okay.
because I've been part of one of those cultures too, right? And I saw it change, which was the fascinating part as a case study, but it was also the sad part as an observer. Meaning, they started out great. When I was there at the beginning, it was just amazing. It felt like a community. It felt like you. It was very easy for you as an employee to identify yourself with the company and its vision. And then, of course, a merger came in.
Mhm.
But it didn't came in as one merger. It came in as three mergers within 6 months. And again, I was already working on the site back then to just get free. And as a consultant, I noticed this is bad because now you take a 200 people company, you scale it to 900, and then you expect the cultures to work under the guise of saying, yeah, we did a background check on the culture and there is alignment and we will integrate amazingly. Turns out that the integration starts, the whole process gets assigned to a committee of people, and the red flags start popping up, and they fire one key person in the management team, which I later realized was somehow the gatekeeper of the culture. And I didn't know it was possible that one single person could be the gatekeeper of the culture. But the moment that guy was off the table, it started going south way faster. And so by the end, you had this management team with somebody from a big consulting company who came in doing what they usually do in those companies, which is firing people. So people started getting scared. So to avoid them getting scared, they pretended like they weren't firing people. But people talk. So on one side, you had management communicating, oh, this was done on mutual agreements. No worries, we are not firing anyone. On the other hand, you had people talking behind the scenes, well, I was actually fired. And
Yeah.
the question with this becomes, how do you, let's say that I am that detached CEO who just stepped in and I started this vicious cycle. Is there a way to make this kind of CEO see the fact that they need to do something, or are they just destined to crash that culture and eventually the company?
Well, I guess you're asking a question of personal growth. Can people change? Can people grow? Because I think, the reflection of a culture is a reflection of a leadership style, which is a reflection of somebody's own investment in their own personal growth. I mean, for me, in my business, I know that professional and personal growth is critical for growth of my own business, because if my mindset is not right, my business is not right, because it's a direct reflection of me and how I think about things, and whether I live in a scarcity mindset or I live in an abundance mindset. For me, it really is that simple, because when you live in a scarcity mindset, you live in fear, you make decisions out of fear. And that, of course, creates a culture of fear and scarcity and making scared choices. And scared choices are what? They're short-term decisions. They're not long-term decisions. So if someone who has built this culture based on scarcity and fear, can they then move to a mindset of abundance and long-term thinking and so on and so forth? Well, it's a good question. Have you seen that?
Well, we come back to the famous saying, can you teach new tricks to an old dog? So it can be
Yeah,
pretty difficult.
I think that it would be difficult. I think that they would have to, one, recognize that they're the problem for a lot of people. The ego gets in the way, and to admit that you're the problem would be a large jump for some of these CEOs. And then they'd have to make that jump to realize, okay, I'm the problem. My problem is my mindset. Now I need to do the work to invest in changing my mindset. Um,
Let's say that
but
let's say that I'm that CEO now. Now I change characters. I turn into that CEO who realize, hey, I'm running this massive company. I am the problem. I want to change this. How do you go then? There is the goodwill. What do you do? Do you start with trainings? Do you do trainings at all? Do you bring experts to carry you along the change process? How do you start improving a culture? Because some companies I've seen try to fix it with more merchandising and more events and print more logos and do more things. It often doesn't work.
I think it would be just what you mentioned earlier, Sebastian, when you said it's about getting on board of the vision of the leader. If that person changed their mind to more of an abundance mindset, they now have a new vision. They now have a new approach. And so their new approach would also include transparency. Just like you said, people talk. And so if somebody was to change their culture, they would change their vision, they would change their mindset. They would now need to communicate that new vision to the people, be transparent about the new things that they and where they are going, and get people on board and excited about this vision, and specifically how they can contribute to this vision and how it will impact them, because everybody wants to know what's in it for me. And that's the same whether you are going to do a vision that is like this, beautiful long-term thing that is full of abundance, right? People want to know how that abundance is going to trickle down to them, and they want to get on board with that vision. And just like, there's the other one, right? Like, we got to get, we got to hit these numbers in this way. And if you don't do it, you're going to get fired, right? That's like the fear side, but the other side is just the opposite.
I saw this 2 years ago already. I talked with this company. I don't know if they're okay with me revealing the name, so I won't, but they did something pretty great. And it's around the topic of transparency and how important it is for culture. The company hit a very dark spot financially. Instead of hiding it from the employees, they hosted a all hands on deck session, and they told them, guys, there's going to be financial trouble in the coming months. We're trying to recover. And they just went to the extreme ownership of telling them, we are not going to be able to pay you for 2 or 3 months. So you can decide to stay or quit. And we will never take it personally. It's fine by us. And they didn't know it at the time, and they didn't expect the reaction of the employees. Nobody quit. People held on, and people 6 months later or less got all their money back and more. So what do you think about that, about the role of transparency from leadership in creating strong culture?
Well, I went through a process of creating my own culture with my leadership team. Last year, we did the EOS system, the entrepreneurial operating system. There's a guy who wrote the book called Traction or whatever. And one of the things that you do is you come up with your core values. And one of our core values, and I have them here, they're blurry right now, but is transparency. So for me, transparency is absolutely not only something that's like important in culture, but it's, for me personally, it's a value that I have, because when you're transparent, you're not making decisions alone in the dark. And instead, you are allowing other people to make decisions with you in an informed way. Just like even the pricing that I have for my career school, I put transparency on where every single dollar goes so that the student, before they enroll, is aware of where their money is going. And if they feel comfortable making that investment and knowing where their money goes. And I think that's true for your employees, for your customers. It allows them to have autonomy in the decision as well, because nobody likes to be deceived through with, somebody withholding information, and nobody likes to feel like they're being tricked. And deception is withholding information. And if people feel that energy of you're withholding, you're hiding something from me, then there's no trust. And if there's no trust, there's no culture.
There's fear. There's a lot of paranoia I've seen in companies with that kind of situation going on.
Yeah.
Have you read the book The Culture Code by Dan Coyle?
No.
I really recommend it.
Okay.
It takes into account a lot of the science behind it, a lot of the neuroscience, a lot of case studies from real companies, from the Navy SEALs to Google. It's an amazing book on culture. Really recommended read. I think you will love it.
Yes. Yeah. No, thank you. I've been, I've attended a lot of sessions and seminars and those kinds of things on culture, but I always like having a book to add to my list.
Great. Listen, you're big on LinkedIn. You're very active. What got you started on the platform? How do you stay consistent? And do you recommend others do it?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, it's part of our training in our career school at Idle Academy is how to set up your profile. We encourage our students to set up their profile as like a landing sales page for them and not necessarily just a resume. Because what is the thing that you do whenever you find somebody's content and you think it's interesting? You go to their profile. And so we want them to set up their profile in a way that is enticing to recruiters. So those who are in the job market, absolutely, you should be active on LinkedIn. Because your network is your net worth. The best way to get a new job is to be introduced by somebody who already works there. The second best way is for a recruiter just to find you and reach out to you directly. And if you have built in the keywords for your career or your industry or whatever into your profile, it makes it a lot easier for people to find you. And I just think that LinkedIn is just one of the best places to connect in a professional way within your own industry. So in that regard, I absolutely recommend it. I've been on LinkedIn since 2011 when I was trying to make my career transition. And then I used it to build my business. And I still use it for connection and building my business today, because a lot of business building is what? It's relationship building. And to be able to easily find out who's in your industry, who's interested in the same things. I mean, look at the opportunity I got here today, Sebastian, was because I was active on LinkedIn. Somebody that all the way across the world in Germany invited me to come and speak with him on his podcast. There's the power of LinkedIn right there. Opportunities. The reason why I became a director of learning and development was because someone reached out to me on LinkedIn and said, hey, would you like to run a learning and development department? That was how I got that job. I didn't seek it out or anything. And
You didn't
so
have to
you
apply
can,
to it.
no, I mean, I had to interview, but
Of
he
course.
asked me to come interview. Yeah.
It's it's such a massive opportunity. And I think you touched on something important that I'm very big on, is the trust factor. especially in some industries, people are burned out from, getting pitched constantly every day, all day on your email, on your social media. They want to offer you copywriting and they want to offer software development. There is a lot of transactional mindset going on, treating, my mentor would say, treating people as meatballs, just as meat sacks, just people with money come in, pay me, and I'm gone. Business is always been human to human, not B2B, not B2C. It's always H to H. So I think trust is big. And on LinkedIn, especially, you get to build that trust at scale. And you get to find your people, you find your tribe, you find people that would like to do business with you, people that would like to do interviews with you. So I was even telling this to a friend of mine who he comes from the cold acquisition and product space, and he's trying to enter the coaching industry. And he's like, yes, I'm going to run ad campaigns to start cold calling people. It's not going to work. He goes, why? It works it works with anything. It doesn't, because you cannot just call somebody, sell them, talk them up on a call. They never met you. They are annoyed because you called them. And then they're going to pay you 5K for 3 months of coaching. They need to trust you. They need to know who you are. They need to know why you should coach them. They need to have a vibe of you. There needs to be an energy match even. So yes, I'm really big on that point of trust you brought up, and it's another pet peeve of mine.
Oh, same. Move to other, unconnect. Like as soon as you get those messages, he's like, oh,
Yes,
annoying.
every
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
Um, you are at this point in idle courses, you are the only certified one, and you are basically at the top of your game as a company, as a CEO. What's your vision for the company? Where do you take it from here?
I'm so glad you asked that question. I actually am really excited. So, we're a state authorized career school in instructional design. We're the only one that is a career school for our industry. And we are currently undergoing the accreditation process. And so we will be a U.S. Board of Education accredited organization by June of next year. That is very exciting for us because not only will we be the first state authorized career school, now we're going to be the first accredited career and trade school for learning and development. And when you become accredited in the US, that means, of course, that you can now receive financial aid, and our students can use that financial aid to enroll. We can get the .edu domain, which allows our students to get discounts on some of the other tools and products out there that give education discounts. And it just allows us to expand our reach to a broader set of potential students, and it increases our credibility for those students in our space. And I just see more and more, and I'm also getting in touch with high schools and those high schools that are teaching their students about the different trades that are out there. And so getting in front of people as young as 18 to even find out that instructional design is a career field and you can learn it as a trade is pretty revolutionary as far as our industry is concerned. And so for me, I'm just excited about just what I feel like the roof is going to come off when we become accredited and we start expanding into the high schools and getting it out there that this is a career that you can aspire to be in, because so many people get into instructional design on accident after they've been a teacher or they've been something else or they accidentally fell into training. And so for them to do it on purpose, I get excited thinking about the level of skills those people have by the time they're like my age, because they get to start at a younger age developing those skills and in the technology that we have and keeping up with the technology. So yeah, very,
Breaking
very
news.
excited.
That's great to hear. And that's called scaling, right? That's a massive step forward. Do you expect any challenges in that process?
No, yeah, I mean, I've already seen them. Yeah, well, of course. I mean, anytime you sign up to get more bureaucracy above your business, um, we're going to have to hire a financial aid director, and we'll have to hire more administrative positions, and we have to put in a whole new student information system. And so, but saying all that, the challenges are going to be putting the systems into place to support the new structure of scale. But as we know, you can't scale without systems. And so kind of the double-edged sword or whatever, right? The pros and the cons is that you're required to put all these systems in to become an accredited school. But really, these systems are what will support us to be a well-oiled school and education program. So yeah, I definitely see challenges, but I am an eternal optimist. So I definitely see the bright side of it.
So where do you see idle courses in 10 years?
So for me, once you become an accredited career school, then it won't just be instructional design that we have as a certification program or a degree opportunity. I see us, because we have an army of learning designers, why not use that same army to build the other degree programs in our career school? And so I see us having multiple different careers moving and putting them under our career school, things that have not been under the career school before. Just like instructional design, I made a career school. I'd like to do that with other industries like project management, virtual assistants, and even early childhood education, and things like that. And so those are kind of the top three on my mind as far as things that were not traditionally seen as trades, but because now things are online and that it is important to become a project manager, that you actually manage projects. So why shouldn't they learn to manage projects through hands-on deliberate practice in a career school?
That's great. How were you able to keep competitors out of the way? Because you must have some, but they're not at that level yet, or they just caught up too late.
I think when you think about competitors, there are a couple of people that want to be competitors, but they don't do things the right way. So in the US, anytime that you teach somebody a career from A to Z, you have to get authorized by the state. And getting authorized by the state is a pain in the butt, right? You've got, things to fill out. You've got financials to keep. You got to get a bond. You've got to keep records of your students, and you've got to do things the right way. Well, the other people in the space are not doing things the right way. They are not getting state authorized. And so they're not going to grow. They're not going to get to the same place. They're not going to be in a place to compete, so to speak, if you don't do the things that you're required to by law. And so I think it's just the barrier to entry, the amount of money, time, resources that you have to have in order to even follow along with the laws and of the regulating bodies. I think that's what's kind of kept them in the back.
We come back to excellence is a commitment, and if you need to commit to excellence in the industry, you also need to put up with the bureaucracy that comes with it, right?
Yes.
Even though nobody likes the bureaucracy aspect of anything, but it is what it is.
It's what protects our students.
True.
Yeah.
So you're leading the charge in the industry. I saw another post from you about somebody else who's leading the charge in the industry, which is women. Women, you mentioned, make up a significant portion of the learning and development industry. Why do you think that is?
I think it's because of the same kind of draw that draws women to education, that draws women to nursing, right? It is I don't want to get in trouble, so it's just an opinion, but I would say, as a woman, the thing that draws me to learning It's one, I love learning. I am just a nerd at heart, but also because of the impact that learning has on people's lives. And I think that is really important to women. I think that having a way to personally connect and impact people on that level is a draw for women. And then because it also pays well, women who have been in these other professions, I get a lot of nurses, I get a lot of teachers move into this industry, right? And they came from these same other types of backgrounds and they are moving into corporate instructional design. Why? Because they get the same fulfillment of serving other people and in this way of educating them and helping them do better in their jobs, but they get paid more and they get to work fully remote. And as a mom of 3 boys, I know that was one of the number one drivers, besides, loving learning, was when I found out that becoming a corporate instructional designer, I could work remotely and be there for my children, as well as make money. That, I mean, it just, I think that's important to a lot of women.
It's a no-brainer for a mother, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you don't want to miss those moments, and your kids desperately need you, even though they're too small to say it, and even when they grow up, they desperately need you. So it's great that you get to be there, and that there is a career that gives you that opportunity.
Yeah.
Do you see more men entering the field in the future, or do you think the balance will stay pretty much the same?
Because it's education and learning, just like even in the secondary and the higher education spaces, you still see more women. I would say you see more men in higher education because of what? Because of the prestige that is attached to being a university professor. You don't really have that same prestige attached to being a corporate learning designer. So I think it'll probably stay a female dominated industry if I was to guess off the top of my head. But I do notice that a lot of the leaders in learning and development are male. So we'll leave that there.
Yes, let's see what happens. Listen, I will ask you a couple last questions. Sorry for the background noise. I just got a message coming. I don't know why. I will just ask you a couple last questions, and one of those is, maybe you said it already, but do you have an opinion you stand by, even if people don't agree with? So a controversial opinion that you can share on the show. It can be about the industry, it can be about tech, about life, whatever.
I think my entire business is a controversial opinion to the industry. As a matter of fact, the fact that I have changed and am calling instructional design a trade and a vocation and not something that requires a master's degree or a PhD. And in fact, it's contrapuntal to that and saying that anyone can learn this trade if they do the activities of the trade rather than going and writing a bunch of research papers at the master's and PhD level, is a very unpopular opinion. And you will find that if you look me up online, and if you want to go read what they have to say about me on Reddit. And it is in many ways it has shook the industry because people got into corporate learning and development because they thought that they were more prestigious in the sense that they have their master's degree and they have their PhD and they're like the smart ones in corporate. And so for me to come along and say, like, you don't need that, and in fact you need something completely different, and to take it down to something that a high schooler can learn as a trade and enter the workforce, has pissed a lot of people off. So I would say that is probably my most controversial opinion.
I love a rebel, and I love somebody who has haters, because it means you're doing something right. And people get pissed all the time. And in your case, I think it's worse because it comes from somebody who has a PhD. So they feel like you should be part of the club, like you should be defending this mouth. So it's great that you're doing that. People still get mad at me because sometimes I meet consultants and people tell me you shouldn't be a consultant if you don't have an MBA. Like, turns out my clients don't give a crap about the MBA as long as I give them results. Not super popular, but it is what it is.
It is what it is. I have an MBA, and I'll tell you what, Sebastian, I didn't learn anything about running a business other than cash is king. And that was just something random that my professor would say over and over again, cash is king. And that was it. That's the epitome of what I learned in my MBA.
That is something that you could also hear from Alex Hormozy for free, at least twice a day in his channel.
Exactly.
Listen, Robin, where can people find you on social media, online? Where can they learn more about the Idol courses and the Idol Academy?
Oh, we are easy to find. You can find us on our website, idolcourses.com, IDOL courses.com. You can find us on Instagram at Idol Courses. You can find us on TikTok at Idol Courses. Facebook, we have a Facebook group, Become an Idol. And of course, you'll find me on LinkedIn, Robin Sargent, PhD. And you can also find Idol Academy on LinkedIn as well as a company. And so we are easy to find. And of course, I also have a podcast, the Become an Idol podcast. And so anywhere that you hang out, as far as social media is concerned, we hang out there too. Except for Twitter or X or whatever, we don't do that one.
It's still Twitter. To me, it's still.
Oh, okay.
I will never give it up. As much as I respect Elon and the things he's achieved, the name is Twitter. That will stay.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I still know it as. Yeah.
Yes. So, any final thoughts before we wrap this up?
Any final thoughts? I would just say that I think the most important thing for leaders to remember in their company is that their people and their talent are their most valuable resource. It is the number one thing that drives revenue. And in that same vein, that means that you need your talent to be developed. And the more that you can develop your talent through deliberate practice, the better. And of course, an instructional designer can help you do that.
I love that. Culture is something I should be talking about more myself in my content. My bad for not doing that, but CEOs listening, do invest in your culture. Your people are your money makers. And if they buy into the vision, they invest more in the company. And if they invest more in the company, your clients get better results. And that means a better world with more value and more revenue. So this was the Tech of Tomorrow podcast, episode number, again, I don't remember, with Dr. Robin Sargent, the founder of Idol Courses. Thank you for listening. And remember to subscribe, follow if you are on Spotify. Please follow the YouTube channel. It's still too small. So do that too. If you're on Apple Podcasts, also follow the show. With that housekeeping done, people, I will see you in the next episode. Dr. Robin, thank you so much for being here. I'm really grateful for this episode we did together.
It was fun. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure.